The morning we left for the village felt different. There was no rush, no nervous chatter between us. Just a quiet kind of determination, the kind that settles in your bones when you know you're finally doing what you should have done long ago. Kamau drove while I held the small calabash from Washera on my lap, my fingers tracing its carved circles as if they could guide us. We had packed the traditional gifts carefully, a jar of golden honey, fresh tobacco leaves wrapped in parchment, and a young goat tied gently with sisal rope. Kamau had insisted on choosing the goat himself. "If we're doing this," he'd said, "it has to be done with respect." It was the first time since our wedding that I had seen something like humility soften his voice, and it soothed the ache inside me. The road to the village was long and winding, lined with acacia trees that bowed slightly in the wind. As we approached my parents' homestead, I could feel my heartbeat rise. Memories of childhood laughter mixed with the dread of facing my father again. When we arrived, my mother was standing outside, wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes searching our faces. There was sadness there, but also relief, the quiet kind that doesn't need words. My father, Murithi, sat under the mango tree near the gate. The elders were gathered again, their walking sticks resting on their knees, their eyes heavy with years of watching traditions bend and stretch. Kamau and I approached slowly, then knelt together on the red earth. The silence was thick, broken only by the goat bleating softly behind us. I spoke first. My voice trembled, but I forced myself to continue. I apologized for our arrogance, for the belief that love alone was enough to stand without the blessing of those who came before us. I admitted that we had acted as if tradition was a burden instead of a foundation. When I finished, Kamau bowed his head and spoke too. Hearing him address my father with such humility moved something deep inside me. He apologized not just for the wedding, but for walking away in anger the last time we came. He asked for a chance to mend the bridge he had broken. We presented the gifts. The elders watched quietly, their expressions unreadable. My father took the honey first, lifting the jar slightly as if offering it to the wind. "Sweetness to replace bitterness," he murmured. Then the tobacco leaves, symbols of peace, of shared breath between families. Finally the goat, a gesture of restoration and respect. After a long moment, the eldest among them, a man named Gathogo, who walked with a slow but steady rhythm, spoke. "The ancestors do not cling to anger," he said. "They only ask to be remembered. If you are willing to complete what was left undone, their hands will lift from your home." He turned to Kamau. "You will perform a simple rorusio, not the full ceremony, only what is required to call the ancestors to witness your union. Once it is done, harmony will return." Kamau nodded immediately. There was no hesitation this time, no pride blocking his words. "I am ready," he said. The elders exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. My mother let out a breath she had clearly been holding for months. Even my father's shoulders relaxed just slightly. As we stood to leave, the wind swept through the compound, rustling the leaves above us. It felt like a quiet sigh, not of anger, but of relief. For the first time in a long time, the world around us felt lighter. Kamau squeezed my hand as we walked back to the car. "We're almost there," he whispered. And for the first time, I truly believed him. The morning of the ceremony felt strangely calm, as if the world itself had paused to watch what we were about to do. Kamau and I walked toward the river in silence, each step sinking gently into the soft earth. The elders had chosen this place, the bend where the water slowed and widened, where our ancestors were said to listen more closely. Kamau led the last cow, a gentle brown one with soft eyes that seemed to understand the gravity of the moment. This was the final piece, the last bride price to be offered, a custom that followed one paid generations ago by Kamau's father. I had grown up hearing that the last cow sealed a union completely, tying two families in both blessing and responsibility. At the time, it had sounded old-fashioned. Now it felt holy. We reached the clearing by the river where the elders stood in a quiet semicircle. Their shukas fluttered slightly in the early morning breeze. My father was there too, leaning on his staff, his expression solemn but not cold. My mother had stayed behind at the homestead, saying the river belonged to men and spirits today, and that her prayers would follow us from afar. Kamau handed the rope to Elder Gathogo, who examined the cow as though reading something beyond its appearance. He nodded slowly, then returned the rope to Kamau. "This is your offering," he said. "Your hands must give it." I watched Kamau kneel on the riverbank, his hands steady on the rope. For a moment, everything felt suspended, the sound of water flowing, the rustle of the trees, even my own breathing. He bowed his head and spoke softly, asking the ancestors to receive this cow not just as a gift, but as a sign of humility and reconciliation. When he finished, he guided the cow forward, letting it drink from the river as tradition demanded. The water touched its muzzle, and just as Kamau released his grip on the rope, a warm, gentle breeze swept through the clearing. It wasn't the sharp wind of a storm or the cold bite of early morning. It felt like a caress, warm, soft, almost human. The elders lifted their heads. My father closed his eyes. Elder Gathogo smiled faintly, as though he had been waiting for that exact moment. "It is done," he said. "They have accepted." I didn't realize I had been holding my breath until I felt something loosen inside me, something that had been knotted for months. A wave of peace spread through me, warm and grounding, as if invisible hands had finally been lifted from our shoulders. My chest felt lighter, my vision suddenly clear. Kamau stood slowly and walked back to me, dust clinging to his knees. When he took my hand, I felt a steadiness in him that hadn't been there before, a calmness that seemed to echo the river beside us. "We're free now," he whispered. I believed him. The air felt different. The world felt open again. And for the first time since our civil wedding, I felt the ancestors not as shadows watching in disappointment, but as guardians finally satisfied, ready to walk with us instead of behind us. Life seemed to breathe again after the river ceremony. The heaviness that had followed us for months lifted so gently that at first I hardly noticed the change. It was in small things, the way I woke up without the strange aching in my chest, how the dizziness stopped. How I could walk from the bedroom to the kitchen without feeling drained. One morning I caught myself humming as I made tea, and I realized I hadn't done that in a long time. My health had returned quietly, like a friend slipping back into the room. Kamau's luck shifted just as softly. A client who had vanished with payments suddenly called to settle the debt. A new contract came in the following week. Even his car, which had become our second home from how often it broke down, started without a single complaint. Kamau joked that maybe even the car had been waiting for the ancestors to finish their work. We went back to the village a week later. This time the air didn't feel tense or watchful. Children ran along the paths, goats bleated behind fences, and smoke curled from cooking huts. My mother welcomed us at the gate with a smile I hadn't seen since before the wedding. She held my face in her hands like she was checking if I was truly well. My father stood a little behind her, leaning on his staff, his expression unreadable at first. Then he nodded at Kamau, a small gesture, but it meant everything. The elders gathered under the magumo tree once more, but the atmosphere was entirely different. Last time they had sat in judgment, now they sat in blessing. Elder Gathogo cleared his throat and said they were ready to officially welcome our union into the circle of the living and the departed. They prayed for us, speaking old words that felt like they carried both the weight and warmth of generations. They blessed our home, our future children, and our families. Kamau and I sat side by side, listening to their voices rise and fall like a steady drumbeat of history. For the first time, I didn't feel out of place. I felt connected, rooted. When the ceremony ended, the village erupted in celebration. Women brought out pots of githeri and chapati, men roasted goat, and the sound of laughter rose like music. Someone started a song and soon everyone was singing. I found myself dancing with my cousins, feeling light, free, and strangely complete. Kamau joined me, his hand warm in mine, his smile bright. He whispered that he never imagined he could feel this close to a world he had once dismissed. I understood exactly what he meant. As the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky with soft gold, I looked around at the elders, at my parents, at Kamau beside me, and something settled deep inside my heart. I realized that modern love and old traditions didn't need to fight. They could exist together, shaping each other in ways we hadn't understood before. Respecting where we came from did not mean giving up who we wanted to become. In choosing both, we had found harmony, and in harmony we had found our true beginning. A year passed so quietly that sometimes I forgot how chaotic the beginning of our marriage had been. Our home felt full now, full of peace, full of warmth, and full of soft baby sounds that made every day feel new. Little Wanjeshi slept in her woven crib beside us, her tiny breath steady and innocent. Namming her after Kamau's mother had brought joy to both families, and somehow it felt like the final bridge that tied everyone together. One warm evening, we hosted a small gathering in our backyard. Nothing fancy, just a few relatives, close friends, and plenty of food. The sun dipped slowly behind the buildings, painting the sky in orange and purple. Laughter floated through the air as children chased each other around the compound. The smell of roasted meat mixed with the scent of blooming jasmine that Kamau had planted months earlier. I sat with a plate of food on my lap, rocking Wanjeshi gently as she slept. Kamau joined me, placing a light shawl over my shoulders before settling beside me. Our cousins, the younger ones, the ones who always teased us for being the modern couple, gathered around, eager to hear how we had survived our first year. It was Kamau who started telling the story. He spoke simply, without trying to make himself look like a hero. He talked about how we believed love alone was enough, how we thought tradition should bend for us because times had changed. He said it with a small smile, the kind that comes when you recognize your own stubbornness. I added the parts he conveniently skipped, the nightmares, the strange happenings, the heavy silence between us as things went wrong. I could see the younger cousins leaning closer, their faces softening, not in fear but in understanding. We told them about the visit to the village, the anger, the confusion, the moment we finally listened. We explained what the elders had taught us, that traditions are not chains, but roots. They hold us steady even when we think we can stand alone. Kamau reached over and touched Wanjeshi's tiny hand. Love can be modern, he said, his voice low but steady, but it becomes stronger when we respect the path that brought us here. The group fell quiet for a moment, not out of discomfort but reflection. Then someone cracked a joke about hoping the ancestors wouldn't haunt their weddings too, and the laughter started again. As the night deepened, lanterns glowed softly around the compound. I looked at the people gathered there, family, friends, old and young, and felt a deep gratitude settle over me. Our story was no longer a tale of rebellion or fear. It had become a memory with a gentle lesson, something we could pass on without shame or regret. Holding Wanjeshi close, I realized that honoring where we come from had not pulled us backward. It had steadied us, guided us, and given our love a foundation strong enough to face anything ahead. And under the starlit sky, surrounded by laughter and soft music, I knew we had truly come full circle. Modern hearts, rooted souls, and a future that finally felt whole.